Folks, welcome back to my channel. I am so grateful that you are here for another video. So today we are going to talk about one of my favorite authors, J.W. Ocker. He just released his newest book, Cursed Objects, yesterday, which was September 15th, 2020. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that book, but more so I just want to talk about J.W. in general, because if you've not heard about his work, you definitely need to immediately. If you are a fan of the spooky, paranormal, anything like that, you absolutely need to check out his work. So the book that came out yesterday, like I said, was Cursed Objects, and it is this book right here. I was very lucky and got the book on release date. So I had pre-ordered the book back in May or June of this year. And typically when I order something through Amazon as a pre-order, I never get the item on release day. It usually ships on release day, and then I get it a day or two later. So I was so thrilled to walk to my door yesterday and see my mailman Ray carrying a box with this in it. So I just wanted to kind of go over the book in general. I have not read it yet, so I cannot give a review for it, but I pretty much can tell you that it's going to be amazing because all of his other work is extraordinary. So the book kind of goes over cursed objects around the world. He talks about the Hope Diamond. He talks about the Curse of Tutankhamun. He talks about Robert the Doll, Shakespeare's grave, the Dybbuk box, Rudy Valentino's ring. He also goes into people that are kind of in the business of cursed objects. So talking to Greg and Dana Newkirk of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, which I absolutely love. If you don't know about Greg and Dana, you should check them out too. I met them. They came to Toledo 2 or 3 years ago now for the Paranormal Fest that we had here at our country club, and they were extraordinary. They had a great talk. Very wonderful, nice, personable people. They didn't make me feel like an idiot for gushing about how much I love their work, so definitely check them out too. But he talks about John Zaffis's Museum of the Paranormal, the Annabelle doll, and all the items at the Warrens Museum, and he even mentions Zach Bagans' museum over in Las Vegas. So, like I said, I have not read the book yet, but I already know it's going to be wonderful. But I did want to just quickly go over JW's kind of bibliography if you've not heard about him before, because he is incredible. So I found out about him a couple years back. My friend Nicole and I took a bucket list trip to Prince Edward Island, which is the smallest Canadian province that's located in the southeast tip of the continent. And I live in Toledo, Ohio, so I am an American resident. And so it's kind of between New Brunswick and Quebec in that area, if you're familiar with the map. But so we decided that we were going to take this trip because Anne of Green Gables has been one of my favorite books my whole life. The entire series. L.M. Montgomery is my favorite authoress, and I really wanted to see where she grew up. I wanted to see where Anne was created. I wanted to see the Red Hills and all of those things that made me love that book series so much. We got to go see where L.M. Montgomery got married. We got to see her gravestone. So it was a very emotional trip for me. I'm getting emotional talking about it right now. Like, it was so fabulous. I definitely recommend, if you've got something like that you absolutely love with all your heart, you should go see it, because it will change your life for the better, I promise you. But that trip was 5 years ago. Next week, September 23rd, will be the 5-year anniversary of when Nicole and I left on that trip. And so we threw in so many things to our trip. Nicole and I are not ones that will go on a vacation and stay in one spot for a whole week. We can't do it. We want to pile in as much as possible. We are the people that will get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and travel hours away to get to our next spot, but stop all along the way at different quirky locations. So we drove to Prince Edward Island from Toledo, Ohio, and we kind of hugged the Lake Erie coast, went up into New York, and then took a ferry over to Vermont on Lake Champlain. Looked for Champy. We didn't find him, unfortunately. But we went to Vermont, and we stayed in New Hampshire that night in a little town called Littleton, in a bed and breakfast. They had one room available and we snatched it up. But that was our whole trip. We didn't really have anything set in stone. The only thing that I had reserved was a cottage on PEI. So I knew that we had to be there to get into our cottage on PEI. So that was it. That was the only thing we really had set in stone. Everything else we winged. You know, if we wanted to stay somewhere an extra day, we did it. Or if we wanted to just keep moving and go somewhere else, we did that too. So on Prince Edward Island, we stayed there for 3 days. I got to knock so many things off of my bucket list, but I could definitely go back there because we missed the whole western portion of PEI. We stuck to the Charlottetown area. We went up to where Prince Edward Island kind of has their national seashore. We went over to Eastern Point Lighthouse. I knocked a bunch of lighthouses off of my bucket list on that trip, just on PEI. But then, as we were coming down from PEI, we drove along the coast of Maine. So instead of driving the way we came back, we decided to coastal trip it the whole way down. So we went all the way down the coast of Maine, and that was a trip because we were dealing with hurricane weather. I think that there was a hurricane in North Carolina area, so all of that weather was getting pushed up into Maine at the time we were there, and it was so treacherous. I don't think I've ever driven through a crazier storm in my life, hugging, you know, the Atlantic Ocean on our left and driving down the whole way. We got to one point where the whole road was flooded and there were cops trying to usher cars through, but it was so deep, you had no idea what was in the water. So we could have been rolling over rocks or limbs from trees and all of these things. It was absolutely terrifying. And we were driving in a little 2005 Ford Focus, and it was crazy. But it was an experience that I will never forget. But all along the Maine coast, we got to see lighthouses. We got to walk in the pouring rain to the Owlhead Lighthouse. She was so sweet. And she had her little fog signal going, so we got to experience that. We went to Rockland and I got to see the Lighthouse Museum. We didn't get to tour it because we kind of wanted to get moving because of the delays that we had in our driving due to the weather. So I kind of got to walk in. I bought a little matte print of the Owlhead Lighthouse, and we also got to stop at a place called the Johnstown or Johnston. I don't remember exactly the name of the place, but there were all of these old antiques all throughout this place. It was closed down. I found out later is because the gentleman that runs the place had passed away. But you could still walk around the grounds and see what they had. So they had an old train station that had old steamer trunks. They had an old gas station that had, you know, old-fashioned gas station, whatever those things are called. But yeah, it was just such an experience. And so if we would have had stipulations put on our trip, we wouldn't have been able to make those stops and see those things. But, you know, as it was, I got to see Portland Head Lighthouse and was very emotional about that one too, because it's one of my top tier favorite lighthouses. We got to see Nubble or Cape Nettic Lighthouse. And then we decided that we were going to keep going into Massachusetts. So the day we pulled into Salem, Massachusetts was October 1st, 2015. It was totally unplanned. We weren't entirely sure when we were going to get there. It just worked out that way. And we knew we were in Salem as we took a right to go into town, and a family of 4 was walking across the street in Halloween costumes. And we were like, is it always like this in Salem? Like, is this just the way it is? And then we realized it was October 1st, and we were like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. So we got on our phones and we were kind of researching a little bit. We found out that there was going to be a parade in the town that day. So we didn't get to Salem until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, though, so we didn't get to see all the things we wanted to. We kind of just did a general walk around the town. We saw the Roger Conant statue. We saw the Salem Witch Museum, and it kind of put in our heads that we want to make sure that we get there to tour that. We went over and watched the Haunted Happenings parade, And one of my favorite memories from that parade was standing watching this parade go through, but there was a group of kids that were standing in front of us. One of them was dressed like Merida from Brave. She had fiery red hair, naturally fiery red hair, and she was so excited about this parade. I mean, the marching bands would come through and she was dancing and she was just having the best time. And it really made me so happy to be there and witnessing this moment in my life. So that little girl is forever in my brain. I have a little video of her dancing with one of the marching bands that was coming through, and it just makes me happy every time I see it. So that little girl, if she's out there somewhere, little Merida, you made my whole day in that moment. So there were things like that happened throughout our whole trip that I absolutely loved, but Salem was an event all on its own. I mean, it was so magical. Everything about that town was incredible. I can't even, like I said, I could take a whole video and just talk about how wonderful Salem was. But then after Salem, we decided to drive down into Sleepy Hollow, New York. So I got to see where Washington Irving's grave was. I got to see Sunnyside. That was absolutely incredible too. I could go into another whole topic about the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery and things like that. But so we got back from our trip, and of course, as you do after an amazing vacation, you start missing certain elements. And I really was missing Salem. So I looked up online books about Salem just so I could kind of read up on it. I was already pretty savvy about like the witch trials and things like that, but I wanted to know a little bit more and came across J.W. Oker's book, A Season with the Witch. And its little subtitle is The Magic and Mayhem of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts. So that's what pinged it for me, was that little subtitle. And I went, well, God, that's a book for me for sure. So I ordered it on Amazon. It came in the mail, and I absolutely fell in love with his writing style, because the whole book is his own experience living in Salem. He picked up his whole family. They moved to Salem for the whole month of October. So he documents the entire experience of living and being in Salem for that whole month, and how magical and kind of maniacal it can be for the residents that live there, talking about different locations to check out, talking about the witch trials and the history of the town. But more so, it's not even just about the witch trials. Salem is a very big maritime city, and that's really what it was known for a long time, aside from just the witch trials. So if you don't really know a lot about Salem, I recommend this book so much, because you will find out wonderful things, and it's got JW's style. His writing style is amazing, because he kind of talks to you like you're there, like you're just having a conversation with him, and I absolutely love that about this book. So then I looked more into him, and I found out he had a couple books before that. His first book was the New England Grimpendium, where he writes about haunted locations throughout the New England area. He followed that up 2 years later with the New York Grimpendium, which is the same kind of a subject, where he just focuses on New York State and talks about spooky and haunted locations that you can check out there. So then in 2014, he came out with Poeland, which is his kind of ode to Edgar Allan Poe, which is awesome. It talks about Baltimore and his life there. And it talks about, all these fun things that you would have never really expected about Edgar Allan Poe. So definitely check that book out as well. And then 2016 rolled around, and he wrote A Season with the Witch. So after that, I started following him a little bit more regularly. Then the next year, in 2017, he came out with a young adult book called Death in Douglas. So it's kind of geared towards preteen age. It's a wonderful book, though. I definitely recommend you picking that up and reading it. If you are a fan of anything young adult, I am a huge Harry Potter fan. I've talked about this on the channel before, so that's not a surprise. But I love young adult books in general. I think that they kind of worm their way into your heart the way no other books are able to. And like the line says in You've Got Mail, when you read something as a child, it becomes part of your identity. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Same way with Anna Green Gables. So it's stuck with me my whole life. And I think that kids that read books like those, it will stick with them and it will grow their love for the spooky and the paranormal. So if you have kids, I definitely recommend you picking up that book for them. They should read that. And then last year, he came out with an adult fiction book called 12 Nights at Rotter House. That was his first attempt at adult fiction, and it's incredible. I picked it up on audiobook, and I have the book itself. Definitely recommend that if you were looking for something spooky and to get you into the Halloween season, since we are so close to that magical time, guys. And then this year he's come out with Cursed Objects. So he is just always coming out with these wonderful things. I cannot wait to get further into Cursed Objects. I've only read a couple pages. But like I said, I can't really give a review until I dive more into it. But I just know it's going to be wonderful. And I also found out, I was looking through Goodreads, and he has got another kids book that's going to be coming out in 2021, I think. The tentative title for it is The Smashed Man of Dread End. So I'm looking forward to picking up that book as well. Basically, if he comes out with something, I'm going to buy it because I just know I'm going to love it. I love his writing style. I love following along on his adventures. So in that respect, I have to talk to you about his website. So he has a site called Odd Things I've Seen, or Otis, O-T-I-S. He also has a Patreon. So if you like the stuff that he's coming out with, you should definitely be a patron of his. I have been for the last, I think, 8 months or so. Love following his work. He has a newsletter that he comes out with, talking about different locations that he's been to and things like that. But Otis really talks about different locations that you can go to, haunted locations, places that have cursed things or just spooky paranormal happenings, tombstones that have epitaphs that curse their murderers, things like that. I mean, things that you wouldn't normally look for in a travel book. It's going to be in Odd Things I've Seen. So I absolutely love that website. And there is an interactive map on the site that is probably my favorite part about it, because you can click on the map. So say you're going to take a trip and you want to see some things that are kind of off the beaten path, not so touristy areas. You can check out the map and it will pinpoint all of these amazing odd things that you can add to your itinerary. And I think that's just amazing because, you know, when you're a kid, you know, my age, I didn't have an option to, when we would take a trip out west. You know, I couldn't look up a spooky area to check out while we were there. Or when we went down to St. Augustine, I didn't even know about the lighthouse being haunted. You know, as a kid, you don't really know about these things. But now that the internet is such a wonderful thing and it opens the world up to all of these kooky, fun things that you can check out, I definitely think that his work is important, and he allows for people to be able to add to the map. You know, if we've been to places, we can write to him and tell him about things that he should add to the Otis map. So it's wonderful in general. I'll post links to both his Patreon page and to Otis in general. But he's extraordinary. He's very active, especially throughout these couple months for the Halloween season. So you should definitely check out J.W. Ocker, because I'm not going to say change your life, but he's going to make your life a heck of a lot better. So I hope that you enjoyed this little video. I hope that you will check out his work. He's extraordinary. And I guess I'll see you in my next video. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.